What's up, guys? Welcome back to Blood, Sweat, and Gear with Skip Hill, S2H. I'm Scott McNally. All of our programming is brought to you by TrueNutrition.com. You could use our code ADVICES for some additional savings. Plus, hey, listen, it helps us to support our programming. When we are doing podcasts about steroids and drugs and all that shit, we don't monetize this. So it helps to support us if you guys shop with them or check out our Patreon. I'll put links to that below. Gentlemen, what's going on?
Well, we don't monetize, but primarily because we can't.
Exactly.
It's not that we don't want to. It's they won't let us. So, there's rules and it's all that type of shit.
We're probably like one step away from being banned. Like if the show just disappears off YouTube, it's because, we crossed.
We'll have to go to Patreon or
I started Patreon,
else.
So there's that.
Did you?
We have Patreon.
Yeah.
It's good to have backup options. Yeah.
Yes. So what's up, guys? How you doing?
We killed off some Whole Foods pizza when we were, having our hardware issues.
Is that what you were eating? I didn't even look.
Because, Whole Foods pizza is not real pizza. It's better pizza.
Yeah,
it's good pizza. It's healthy.
It's good.
No, it's not. It's pizza. But it is good pizza.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. It is very underrated. So if you pass the pizza in Whole Foods and you go, God, that kind of looks good. It is fucking good.
Yeah.
So,
dude,
it's still pizza, but it's good.
Their whole pre-COVID hot food bar was the bomb. Like, the bomb. The brisket, the chicken, everything.
They still have it? Oh, they may not have it in Michigan.
Yeah, we don't have it.
Okay. We have it down here. I was using it for my loads every Sunday. I was going through and getting a whole bunch of shit. It's awesome.
Isn't it delicious, man?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep. And people complain about paying about, a bunch of money because it is expensive.
Oh, yeah.
But legit, they don't make their stuff with high fructose corn syrup, all the, GMO and all that type of extra. It really is, pretty healthy shit. You're paying more for it, but it's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah. We're not brought to you by Whole Foods, but we support them. Yeah.
We might be. If we keep it up, we might be in a couple of weeks, and that would be a hell of a sponsor.
We could do that. You can make. Are you telling me that you could make that happen?
I can make that happen. I'm connected. I'm connected in the South.
Stage, what's going on, man?
It's supposed to snow here.
You're kidding me.
Are you joking or are you serious?
It's 30 degrees out right now. They said it's going to snow.
No shit.
Huh. So, here everybody fucking panics and it's like, we're all going to die. And they run the stores like crazy. It's I mean, if it snows, it'll flurry, Yeah. And it'll be
New Orleans
80 on Thursday.
Anybody in New Orleans, I just read before we started the podcast that there's a state of emergency because they're going to drop below freezing.
Yeah, that's the same thing here, dude.
A state of emergency. Holy shit.
That's brutal.
You're like wrap your pipes, winterize your fucking, irrigation stuff on your yard.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going to die. It's over, dude.
All right.
Make sure the water trickles in spaghetti. I think they described it as a spaghetti trickle. That's what it was.
No, there's a certain system you have to do to winterize it.
All right, let's talk some bodybuilding, guys, because we have a bunch of stuff. For starters, Skip has an evolving relationship with reps in reserve. So I want to hear all about that. Because I feel like at one point he was probably like, fuck that shit. If you're not going to absolute failure every time, then you're not even working out. But his relationship is evolving, so I want to hear about that. We might talk a little bit about what seems to be what was a touchy subject between a few people online. Is bodybuilding a sport or a beauty pageant? I have a bunch of questions. Thank you guys, first of all. Everybody from the group pitched in last minute and gave us a bunch of questions. I think I have some on Instagram too, so I'll check over there. Tons of bodybuilding questions, though. Gear, training, gear, diet, and gear. All of those things will be covered here. Skip has been coaching people for 20 plus years. Now, if you do the math on that, as a full-time coach, I mean, that's literally thousands and thousands of people. And I'm not like, you would be a douchebag if you were like, I've coached thousands of people, but I can say it. You have. And
he can say it too. Don't worry.
Yeah. But seriously, though, there is something to be said about that. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. We talked about S2H's background the other week. coming up through basically understanding everything about the weird and random compounds that exist in this sport. So I'm excited to dig into this. Before we get to the questions, let's talk about this reps and reserve stuff, because I want to hear what's up with it. Where are you at?
Where am I at? I'll tell you where I am now versus where I was a couple months ago. I'm looking into it a little bit more. And when I say that, it kind of sounds or gives the implication that I kind of just didn't pay much attention to it at first and give it much attention. And that would be true for the same reasons that you were saying, Scott, because it's just a matter, I've always kind of approached training, and I've been training for a long time. How long, Scott? S2H?
31 years and 6 weeks and 4 days.
36. Anyway, point being, after a certain amount of time, you do kind of get locked into some things that you consider to be very black and white. And one of those things is, you train your ass off in as short amount of time as you can, and you get the hell out of the gym and you grow. I mean, that's just always the way I've kind of approached it. So when it comes to reps in reserve, I had to laugh when I first heard it, because I thought, oh, there's a fancy name for not working very hard.
I figured that was, yeah.
That's exactly how I looked at it. And, it's kind of an eye roll, because I'm like, God, go figure, you got to take something now. And, we have to put this science bullshit with it and try to make it sound scientific and everything else. But anyway, the long story short is I start looking closer at my own training, and I have this battle, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. That you grow, typically the large majority of people will grow well on lower volume and higher intensity work. I think it's kind of a given to different degrees, as far as, what is low volume, what is high intensity, things like that. And those definitions aren't terribly black and white. The point is, by and large, I think most people know that they progress while doing that. The problem is a lot of times we leave the gym feeling like, God, I think if I did a little bit more, I could have done more work. I think if I did a little more work, I might have gotten more out of it. I think the longer you train, two things happen. One, people who've trained for a long time do prefer, usually, higher volume. They want to work. Their work ethic is strong because they've been doing it for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Number two, they have a high pain tolerance, in the sense that and I know that people who haven't trained for very long are thinking, well, I've got a high pain tolerance too. That's possible. But the reality is, the longer you train, the more you can tolerate. Not only the more intensity you can generate, because you're going to train harder at 5 years in than you are at 1 year in. You may not think you are, because you think that you're training at 100%. But as you build muscle and you kind of lock in those pathways between the brain and the muscle that you're working, you can generate more intensity. You're contracting the muscles harder. You're taking the set further. And I think people will come to realize that if they train. Well, once you train for a long time, you can literally find yourself, I think, overtraining or dancing on that line of being overtrained. And it doesn't feel like it. It feels like normal training. And pulling back from that is kind of like, well, shit, this isn't, terribly uncomfortable. This isn't training that I can still
more.
do this. Exactly. I can do another set. I can do, that sort of thing. So what I have kind of come to see in my own training is, and, if you're not constantly analyzing your training and your progress, then you're leaving, a lot on the table.
Yeah.
So in looking at it, I'm looking at it going, gosh, these workouts are going great. I've been progressing. At the same time, I'm thinking, man, my strength is literally the same in prep as it is when my calories are higher in the off season. Why is that? That really probably shouldn't be. I should be stronger in the off season when my weight is higher and things like that. So I forced myself to back off on the volume and it's only been a few weeks. And I started to look into this reps in reserve. I'm not going to leave reps in reserve technically and count them as working sets, but I have cut. In looking at that approach, I've looked at my total volume, and let's just say, instead of taking your top 2 sets to failure, I take the first set to roughly 90%, which again comes back to reps in reserve. I'm not counting like, oh, I had 3 more reps or I had 1 more rep, but I'm getting close to failure and leaving that last set for kind of an all out thing. And within 3 weeks, my poundages are up like 10%. It's just retarded. It's funny because then, of course, your recovery is so much better.
Yep.
And you start to notice it. And it's not even just your poundages, it's how things feel. The dumbbells, when you start and you get it 3 or 4, you're like, oh my God, like this just feels 30 pounds lighter than it should, versus, oh my God, this feels like it's going to crush me at 3, but I managed to get 12 with good form.
Yeah.
There's a different feel in that when you're recovering the way that you're supposed to.
Dude, I don't even know if I would title this reps in reserve as much as you're doing what I'm doing, which is what I would call, your own version of high intensity.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what it is the reps in reserve kind of got me to
where you're
look at it closer. To kind of take a closer look at it. And the primary reason, if I'm, being honest, is I was struggling with my legs, especially coming off this injury. I'm like, I want to really make huge strides with my legs. Essentially, my back has been injury-free for almost 5 years. There's no excuse now to be uncomfortable or think that I'm going to blow my back out. I still have to keep it in the back of my mind, but I need to train heavier, and I need to get my weights up instead of being scared that I'm going to have to take a shit in the shower again when it's been 5 years now. So in doing that, I
still do that if you want to. You can still take a shit
and that
in the
was
shower.
something I considered as well. Even if things are going well, if I want to shit in the shower, it's my fucking shower.
You're an adult. You do what you want.
Exactly. So in doing that, I started coming off of this injury, and my strength has not really gone up. And I'm looking at my strength on legs. I'm like, it's been 3 months since I have come off this injury and back to heavy leg training. And I'm really no further. I should be further along than this. So in cutting things back, that's what I have found. In just the last 3 weeks, my poundages for my entire body, not just my legs, but they're starting to climb because the recovery is so much better. Am I necessarily keeping reps in reserve? Not as much as I've cut the volume considerably, and I've taken that one set away from failure instead of doing 2. And when you're not doing very much volume, that could be, to throw numbers at it to give you an idea, that could be a 40 or 50% reduction in intensity in a sense. And that can allow, if you're teetering on the edge, I wasn't overtrained, I was still progressing, but it wasn't enough progress until I kicked back, and then it just kind of took off. It's like throwing gas on a fire.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great, man. I love it. And what you're talking about is a lot of it is what I've been doing. If you can do a bunch of mediocre sets for a long time in the gym. You know what I mean? Like you could spend 3 hours, I've done it, training back. You can do a bunch of mediocre shit for a long time. But if you really go all out and you do something that you haven't done before, you give your body that intense stimulus, then, that's really like, you could tell, man, like I got everything I needed out of that set. There's no need to do those endless sets. And for people like us, I call us the people that aren't Brandon Curry. It's gonna be to our advantage, to try to figure out how to recover. I gotta throw this in here. Tanya Miller, she says, what happened to 715? Yeah, sorry, Tanya.
We had hardware issues, Tanya.
Yeah, I have. I've got a couple clients that are in town training. Well, one client and her significant other training this weekend, and we were going to have Andrea on the show with me. We just hammered out some legs here in the home gym, and then she was going to sit in with us, but I had some hardware issues, so we ended up being late. So sorry, Tanya. I'm just trying to be a man of my word, but this is not Skip's fault. This is not S2H's fault. But let me tell you though. So we did a little bit more volume for glutes. We did because one of her big focuses is glutes and then hams. So it was a glute hamstring focused workout. We did a few more sets for things like pre-activate the glutes. We did some hip thrusts. We did 3 sets of those. We did some banded girl type stuff. I call it girl stuff. It's like what all my bikini competitors do. Stuff laying on the floor, doing a bridge with the band, all that stuff. But you do that stuff before we got into the meat and potatoes. Then we hit hamstrings. I literally did 1 set. I worked up to 1 brutal rest pause set. And this set was the heaviest set I've done on my hamstring curl machine. Then from there, we moved over to, hack squat. We did sets of 8, not failure, but sets of 8. Probably could have gotten 12 or so and kept working up the weight until we got to 1 set where we did just a brutal all out rest pause set. So, like 3 sets of hip thrusts, couple little BS things before that to activate the glutes, then 1 hamstring curl, 1 hack squat. That's like 5 sets that we did total for the entire workout for legs.
Right.
But I can do that and get out. They're going to be sore tomorrow. Like that set that we did for hack squats was like all you had in you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I ended up failing on it and had to like crawl out of the bottom of it. I will be sore tomorrow, but I will recover from that too. You know what I mean?
And I think too, if anybody's listening and they know the ins and outs of reps in reserve, like let's just say someone wrote a manifesto and there is a specific 100% way to do it. I haven't read that. I'm not aware of that. I'm taking reps in reserve at face value, basically saying, if you can get 12 and you leave 2 in the tank and you're only getting 9 or 10, you leave 2 or 3 in the tank, then that I'm taking it that way. So if there is a very black and white way that it's done, I'm not aware of that. Okay.
Yeah, the black and white way of reps in reserve would be and here's the thing too. I've seen people get it kind of confused where I've known people that are like, they always train with 2 reps in reserve. Like that's just what I do. I think the way that I've seen it work well for people are the people where because you can only like be your strongest ever for so long. Like you can't progressively move up, so periodization would be, okay, let's say that I just lifted the heaviest I ever lifted on my dumbbell incline press. Now, next week, we back it down to 3 reps in reserve. So I still use the same weight, but I leave a few in the tank and then, or 4 or whatever. And then the following week we do 2 reps or 1 rep in reserve. And then the following week, then we hit it again and I try to get more than I did before. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm having a hard time adapting to that. Instead, I was talking to Ben Pollock about this, and I'm kind of going with lightening the weight a little bit and then making it like how hard was that actual set? Was that an everything set? That would be like a 10, or whatever. Or like if the 125s are like my hard set on dumbbell incline press, the 115s are like an 8.5. You know what I mean? But if I do the 105s, that's like a 7, Yeah,
it's funny that you say that too, because let's just take those numbers as arbitrary examples. If I'm pressing 125 pounds and I can get 10 reps to failure, honestly, I'm going to get more out of the set that is at the 105, 110 range to failure than I am 125s at my max weight. It's going to feel better to me while I'm doing the set. Yeah. I'm going to have better control. I'm going to have better contractions, because there comes a point with me. So I assume that there comes a point with everyone where when you go too heavy, you can still get the reps. They may look like great. The mechanics may be great. The form may visually look good from the outside, but they don't feel the same way as they do if you're a small percentage of weight underneath what that max all out set actually is. Now, I'm not saying stay away from the max set. All I'm saying is, personally, I don't want to hit that. I don't want to focus my 100% of my energy, my focus on growth on that set. I'd rather focus it equally on that set prior, whether it's prior or the one after. There is, I call it the green room, and I'm sure it's a reference from surfing.
Yeah.
Where you just get the perfect wave. It rides perfectly. It's a perfect visual. You wish you had a camera. And if you catch 100 waves, only one of them are you in the green room. And I sometimes think about that when I come out of a set, and I'll think, oh my God, that was just, can't every set be just like that? But they aren't.
Now, did you hear that from like surfers down there in Florida, or did you hear that on Point Break?
Point Break. I don't know about Point Break, but God, that brings up Keanu Reeves. I'm not a big fan of his acting, but nonetheless, what was that, like early 90s? That's an old movie.
Yeah. I got it on VHS somewhere.
Not only was Patrick Swayze alive, but he had blonde hair.
Is he dead?
He was looking like a stud in that movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he dead?
He's dead. Oh yeah, he's dead.
Is he? Oh.
He died of I want to say pancreatic cancer, but it was a cancer. It may not be pancreatic, but he died of cancer. Yeah.
I like the movie when he molded the little clay thing with Demi Moore.
Did you cry?
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. That wasn't I don't think that was a very popular movie at all.
I like it.
So what else do we have here, guys? Do we want to talk about this sport versus pageant thing, or do we want to move on to the?
We do. No, we want to talk about it.
I'm telling you, it's a good one.
All right.
I heard it 3 times from 3 different pages this last week. That's what made me want to bring it up.
I got asked too on one of my Instagram Q&As. Somebody asked me if bodybuilding was a sport or a pageant, and then I also got asked, was NASCAR a sport? Which I thought that was interesting. I said yes.
Ooh, I had not. Yeah, and I'll reserve my answer. No, I'll say yes, but I'll reserve my explanation. S2H, you should run with it. Sport or bodybuilding or pageant.
I saw this, and of course, I'm not going to comment on any kind of like Twitter or anything like that because it's stupid.
Bring that mic in.
Can you hear me?
Bring it in close.
No, I mean I can see where people who, if you look at sports in general, okay, for almost all sports, there's a defined end state or a defined score / result that makes somebody a winner.
Like gymnastics.
I'll just take powerlifting, for example. All right. He who snatches, pulls, presses the most weight is going to win. Okay. Now I can see people who don't understand bodybuilding where they may think it's kind of a pageant. And I'm not saying it is. I mean, I would put it as a sport, but the subjectivity of the placements, like whoever, winners, first, second, third, to most people, it's hard for them to really grasp that. And there's a lot of subjectivity to it. I mean, there's not a real defined standard. There's not like a saying, hey, if you're playing golf and I shoot 3 under and you shoot 2 under, I win. I mean, it's cut and dry. So it's not real cut and dry how people place and win. I think it also probably gets, the only reason I could see like someone saying it's a pageant is because it's similar in the aspect of it's an individual or individuals on stage in, bikinis, in, posing trunks, whatever. So there's some similarity there's a stage, there's people on it. They're judging a physique, they're judging a look. But where people probably if they don't understand it, or even people that are in it sometimes can't grasp it, how there's not a real defined standard to place a winner. There's not like a set, hey, you drove around the track the fastest or you hit the most balls out of the park or whatever. Okay. So that's kind of how I look at it. Yep. I can see their point.
And I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at the comment about my tan.
This is how recently I actually trained legs, by the way, guys.
Nice. I do the same thing. Sometimes I get home and go, "Oh shit, I didn't take."
But don't leave those on, dude. You get the worst lines in your skin.
They were in my.
Well, they were on his calves. Yeah, not at his ankles. I'm sure. Yeah.
Plus, they're
like
over
his calves.
They're thin cloth ones, so they're not even. They're like just to keep your leg warm.
Are those custom made to go over your calves?
Yeah.
He needs Velcro. He's got to do Velcro latches once they're over his calf. Where are you then, Scotty McNally?
Man, I'm gonna go with the sport. I kind of chirped in when Scott was talking, S2H was talking, and saying, "What about gymnastics?" There's things like that, or ice skating.
They're subjective.
Yeah, they are subjective. I think that it crosses some lines. I do think that
it does take talent, though. I'll inject that, but go ahead.
Yeah. I like the way you use the word inject.
One thing real quick, though, with like gymnastics and ice skating, not that I follow either very well, but my mother does, is they have set moves that people have to perform to a certain standard to score high enough. So there is a expectation of a certain standard of performance.
Right.
So, I think that would be a little bit different, but I can see the similarity. Boxing, there's a lot of boxing matches people think somebody won and somebody didn't.
Yeah.
Right, but you're looking at primarily at the judging component of it, which it's a part. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. That's
but what
I
about
was.
The talent component?
Well,
is that where you were going?
Well, what I was going to was now until you've actually done it. Like I feel like here's the thing. I feel like, and listen, all respect, everybody deserves to have their own opinion. And I think that's totally great. I do think though sometimes I hear a lot of opinions from people who haven't like really had a lot of experience with bodybuilding, and people who haven't had a lot of experience with bodybuilding on the competitive level. And, you know, like I said, you're entitled to your opinion, but I think a lot of times it's those people, and I feel like there's like a certain amount of negativity that comes along with that say they're the people who are like, you're not an athlete. You know, bodybuilders aren't athletes. And those are like, then a lot of the people though who say that are just like the fans. They're the people that don't really know. Like you can be a big fan of it. You can listen to all of Fuad's podcasts and you can understand the way he thinks by kind of paying attention really closely. You can know all the names. You can know what a good pose looks like. But until you've actually been up there battling side by side for first place, you don't know what it feels like physically to hold a pose under those conditions. And I think that does takes a lot of physical strength to do. So I will say that there is definitely a lot of fine-tuned ability. And the guys who do it really well, like if you just watch pro bodybuilders, you know, a lot of people are just fans of the pro level. Like they make it look easy, you know, they make it look so easy. Even the guys who aren't considered to be like great posers, like they're blowing away, you know, like somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Like these guys are so, in my opinion, I don't know how you would define talent, but they put so much effort into learning how to do that well. And, you know, presenting yourself and holding those poses is something that until you've actually done it on stage, you don't know what it's like. So I'll say that there's an amount of like athleticism that takes. And then it gets kind of murky, but then there's some athleticism, you know, in the gym too, like the work that you have to do. And you always hear people say that the competition doesn't happen on the stage, which it does, you know, but the competition happens leading up to the show. You know, that's where all the work is done. I think that it takes a great deal. I wouldn't say that it's all sport. I think it's part sport and part pageant. I think that it doesn't really fit into anything. And let's face it, I mean, I love the sport, but sure, yeah, it is weird. Like if you really think about bodybuilding, it's a weird thing, you know, and that's, I love it, you know, but it is strange. Yeah, that,
I mean, to say they're not athletes though, I think that would be, I don't know how somebody could say that.
Yeah. You hear it though.
Looking at the guys up there. I mean,
you hear it though.
Talent and athleticism there.
Talent. Where's the talent? I want to hear the talent because I'm obviously leading into the fact that I disagree because I see it as a talent can be talent. And I'm not saying you're wrong because you are right. You made a very good point, Scott. And this is what I said online too, and I got jumped on for it, which is hilarious because that's the internet. But you are entitled. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying how I view it, how I view what we do after doing it for so long. And it doesn't mean that because I've done it longer that my opinion is better than someone who hasn't done it as long. I'm just saying I've done it for a long time. I've been up there. I've been the competitor, and I still see it the way that I see it.
So how do you see
I'm
it?
just asking where the talent, what part of it is talent?
Well, there's talent in anything. Like someone could say, hey, Skip, you're very talented at talking a lot.
Okay, here's the talent.
You are.
Okay,
but I mean,
but there's no talent.
Talent's a very general word.
Here's the talent. Here's the talent. Terrence Ruffin. He's a talented poser. He's great at what he does on stage.
Okay, and I would agree with the posing component of it, but he's not winning shows because of his posing. He's winning, in my opinion, he's winning shows because of his physique. The posing is an added dimension that may set him apart, from other people, but it's not typically going to win a show. I mean, you're judged.
I've seen guys who pose poorly though. Guys that don't. The guys that have we'll say the opposite level of talent to Terrence that have brought. I can think I don't want to put him on the spot, but I think one guy that I really like a lot, and there was a critique this past year that he could have placed higher had he been a better poser. So I do think that posing does play a role into it. Knowing it's just to me, that's part of it. I
do think it's a part of it, but I think it's incredibly uncommon that the posing can take you up in placings unless everything in an odd situation is just so bizarrely neck and neck. I'm not saying it's not important, but let's just take it at this. I guess I'm looking at it this way. At Terrence's level, I won't disagree with the fact that the posing is far more important. But if you get into pretty much in damn near every show in the amateur ranks, I mean, it's just such a mind. Now,
I disagree because you can pose yourself, present it differently.
If you're just going to do it poorly and you're not going to be able to display your physique, excuse me, I'm sorry, at a level to where you're just really shitty at it, then I can agree with that. I just don't see the talent in what we do to prepare for competition. The posing, I guess, could be considered a talent. Outside of the talent, though, the dieting, the picking up weights, and what do you really work out better than anybody? That to me is not a talent, and I don't want to say that in a mocking way if that's what you guys think. But I just don't look at training like that. It's black and white. It's do it to the degree that you need to do it to get better. But I don't see talent in that. Talent is like you were saying, doing a triple Lutz or something on, in ice skating, or being able to even shoot fucking, you're a 9-ball champion on a pool table. That takes talent. Now, I'm not saying that's the only thing or the only reason that the sport of bodybuilding, to me, and I say sport, that I don't consider it a sport, because I consider it a pageant more than anything else. I'm not saying that because there's a lack of talent involved. I have other reasons. I think now, and this might irritate some people listening, and damn sure would irritate people online. I think that bodybuilders, especially competitive bodybuilders, who know what it takes and the all-consuming components of 24/7 dieting, training, it's on your mind, it's consuming. We want to treat it as a sport because that gives it credibility. To call it a pageant in our mind says we're not Hawaiian Tropic girls, but you are in the very literal, simple sense of how you're judged. You're judged only on how you look. You're not judged on how you train. It indirectly impacts how you look. I agree with that. But we all know plenty of people who are 10 times better than we are on stage, and they may not train and diet as hard as we do. So it's not just a work ethic issue. You do what you have to do to be the best that you can be, but you're not judged on that. That's all left in the gym. You're judged only on what you look like. And that is no different than a Hawaiian Tropic contest at a bar with a bunch of drunks, and the Hawaiian Tropic girl has the best tits and ass, and she gets $500 for the night.
All right. I think Scott Stevenson agrees with you, and he may disagree with you. I'm not sure. I didn't read all this. We'll put the comment up, and we'll see what Scott says.
One thing though is, what's the definition of a sport too?
And that is true.
There's a lot of generalized terms.
I think Scott gets into that here too. Let me see what he says. Let's see. Just because a particular competitive endeavor requires athleticism does not make that competitive activity a sport. If bodybuilding were standardized as a competitive endeavor, such that posing, performance, presentation were formally graded subjectively, a la figure skating, it might be considered a sport. But that's not typically the way in which placings are decided. I think I'm with Skip. What Skip is going to say, more of a pageant. And then he adds, I've got one more here.
What's what I said about the judging?
He says, I have seen some guys have better talent in how they train. That's interesting. They simply can connect with the muscle in a better way. I noticed that right off the bat in training with Dave Henry, different from other people. Now, that's a good point right there. What about that? I mean, I guess that could be considered a level of talent. You see people that are like natural athletes, and you probably, Skip, you've probably worked with people that are natural athletes, that it's like, oh, they did sports all their lives. They come to bodybuilding when they retire, and they just were really good at it, versus the guy like me that went to art school. And I feel like a decade later, it's like, I can own it now. But it's like, it took me a lot longer than some other people that were dude, I went to high school with this kid, Quinn. I don't want to say his last name. I don't know why, protect his identity. We also did some really bad shit that we could have probably gotten to jail for. But that was high school. That time's gone. This kid was great at everything we did. Shooting pool, running, fighting, anything we did, he was just genetically connected to that shit. Is that a talent, Skip?
I disagree with that component, or, of what he's saying. Dave Henry may connect better, but it's not anything necessarily that he has earned or turned into a talent. It's something that comes easier to him. It's no different than someone picking up a baseball and being able to throw it harder than someone else, or hitting a golf ball for the first time, and all of a sudden they're pretty good at it. That's just
but then
something
you develop that.
You may develop that, but again, I don't see it as a talent, and I'm not trying to undervalue, what we do. I mean, it is all consuming. It is incredibly difficult, even if you're not at a high level, to be married to this and have this passion, whether you're good at it or not, to do it. It's very difficult to do. So I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody. Remember, I'm in there with, the guys who disagree with me, and maybe I've trained longer than them too and been married to it longer. I don't know. I'm saying, though, strictly from the judging component, you're being judged on how you look. Sometimes I scratch my head and I go, I don't know how other people cannot see this as a pageant, because that's how we're judged. It is subjective. There are parameters but they're so gray. They're no different, bikini contests, physique women's physique. It's not straight across the board. Bikini is, and I don't want to offend anybody by saying this, but the reality is bikini versus open bodybuilding, the criteria for open bodybuilding is at least more black and white than bikini. You can put it on paper and make it sound like it's black and white, but you can pretty much, hottest girl wins. I'm not saying, and I'm oversimplifying it, but you're not, it's just kind of a total package, total look. And then you're going to justify that placing from there. It's a glamorized pageant.
Okay.
To me, it just takes more to get there than it does for something like a, Hawaiian Tropics contest or something like that. I see that. I don't believe there's any talent involved. I think it is execution, consistency, discipline, the day in, day out, married to it type of thing. And I think that the large part of whether you're going to be really good at it is whether you have that hereditary component to where you're more genetically predisposed. It's does Phil Heath work harder than the guy who, Phil Heath is a bad example because he has 7 Olympias, but someone who wins an Olympia or turns pro, are they necessarily working harder than the person who hasn't turned pro and doesn't have very good genetics? I don't know that that's always the case. I mean, we got a lot of hardworking people at the state and regional levels who will do it for years and years and years, but they're not going to get there, not from a lack of talent, I guess. They just genetically don't have that. You were talking about your friend, Scott.
We got to move on, though. Just to let you know, because we're going way long. So I was trying to stop you a few minutes ago.
Okay, it goes both ways, and that's fine. If you have a different opinion, that's cool. It's when you don't, and this is what it turned into on the internet. If you don't respect the fact that there are differing opinions on it, then it turns into name calling, and then you're not qualified to give an opinion and shit like that. It's just kind of laughable the way people react over it. But
do you have any final thoughts, Scott? Or are you good to move on, get some questions knocked out?
Skip's totally talented.
Talented, but not in bodybuilding.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for watching another podcast here at Think Big Bodybuilding Media. And thank you to our great sponsor, TrueNutrition.com, for making this all possible. TrueNutrition.com is owned by Dante Trudell, the creator of DC Training. He wanted to create a supplement company that offered high-quality, third-party tested supplements at a fair price. High-quality protein powders, just about every type you could think of. Huge variety of flavors, plus health and performance supplements. Check them out, TrueNutrition.com. And hey, if you use our code ADVICES, you directly support our podcasting. Thanks, guys. Let's get back to the program. Let's get to some questions then, because we've got a bunch of them. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you short, but I just know we'll
I
keep
can go on
going.
and on about it. You need to cut me off.
He reached his 17-minute limit, so it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. We had 2 topics too, so I know people are waiting to get their questions answered. We did a bunch of stuff, like I said, over at the Advices Radio group. Also, guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to comment on this post, and we'll get to those questions on the next episode. And also, commenting helps to boost us in the algorithm. Comments, likes, all that stuff. And if you haven't subscribed, please do, because we got a bunch of content coming out each week. Let's see. Where are we going to start here? At what body composition? This is Kyle Becker, by the way. At what body composition, body fat percentage, amount of muscle is ideal for starting a cycle? I'm going to guess he's saying like an off-season cycle, but, I don't know.
Say that again? Oh, like the normal, hey, if you're not 10%, you shouldn't take gear.
Yeah, where should you be if you want to start?
First of all, I don't think most people know what body fat percentage they really are.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, true.
Okay, let's say if you're healthy, you're not obese or something. I mean, this is just somebody who wants to take it for the aesthetic purposes. Not because they have low testosterone or something. I mean, as long as you're in decent shape, I think there's no like set body fat, but I mean, there's a point where your body fat's so high that you're not healthy. So if you're healthy and your body fat's in a range where you're healthy, I guess if you want to take some stuff, then it's good, because everybody in the world's going to tell you they're like 10% when they're really like 17, 18, 19. I mean,
yeah,
I don't think people know what their body fat really is. So
yeah.
I don't think that's a good gauge.
So what would be a good gauge then to decide,
you're healthy?
Yeah.
That's a big one, because if you're obese, I mean, you're not healthy. Your heart's under a lot of strain, your organs, I mean, blood pressure is probably high, different things like that. So if you have good markers and you're reasonably in good shape, I mean, it's your personal choice, but the people that shouldn't are the ones that are not healthy. So, if you have diabetes and you're overweight and all this stuff, then it's probably not the thing you want to do right then.
Skip, how many people come to you and they're like, hey man, I've been thinking about working with a coach. I've been watching Blood, Sweat, and Gear for the last 5 years. And I want to hire you, man. I want to grow as much muscle as I can. And they come to you and their body fat's too high to really start a growth cycle.
With body fat percentages, look, if he did say ideal, okay?
Yeah.
Ideal going into a growth phase. Again, ideal is that your body fat is relatively low, so that things like insulin sensitivity are high, and you're ready to basically take advantage of the growth phase, whether you're going into a cycle or not. But I will say, unless you're really well versed and advanced in using, not only in bodybuilding itself, and you've had a few off seasons, and you're more than a handful of years into bodybuilding and training, even if your body fat level is high and you start your first or second or third cycle, you should still respond relatively well to that cycle anyway. I don't think it's not like you're going to get shitty results. It's just that ideally, again, going back to him using that word, the lower the body fat, the better. That's just something that has become more and more obvious, and people are starting to accept, thankfully, over the last 5 to 8 years, where it used to be that put on as much weight as you can, eat to get as big as a house, and then worry about body fat later. And I never liked that approach. S2H touched on it, not only for just progress and results, but even for the health component. I don't think it needs to happen. I know that there are plenty of people who will argue differently, and that's fine. Listen to their podcast, see what they have to say. My opinion is that the health does matter, but even if you take the health out of it and focus only on the progress part, you're going to, or should have, better results if you start out where you're more insulin sensitive and grow from there. Cycle or not, again, even if you're natural and you're not going to do a cycle, the more insulin sensitive you are, and typically that comes with being leaner, then the better opportunity you have for growth and progress. Doesn't mean that because you're lean, you're going to automatically have great growth and progress. Everything has to be optimally put together and executed consistently. Yeah. But you are setting yourself up to be more successful if you come in leaner, start the phase leaner.
All right. How about Joshua Hausman says, how do you know if your digestive system is screwed up, and how do you go about fixing it? I guess if your digestive system's screwed up because your digestion system is screwed up. You've got problems. How do we go about fixing digestive issues?
That's a complex question, because there's a lot of digestive issues.
Yeah. So what would be some of the first things?
Well, I mean, if you have, so let's say you have bowel movement issues, bloating, gas. I mean, I'm assuming that he's not digesting food well. I mean, the first thing I look at is what's your diet like? I mean, what are you eating?
Yeah.
It could be something, you could be allergic to something you're eating.
Sure.
You could be, lactose could be an issue. There's a lot of things. I mean, that's a pretty broad question. I think you'd have to figure out, the main thing is figure out what's the problem. What's the cause and effect? So what's causing this issue? Is it what you're currently eating? Is it, do you have like I said, are you allergic? Are you having food allergies? Is there something going on? Because if you just you can randomly guess and start changing things, but it's kind of tough just to throw a general blanket at it,
I missed the question because I was trying to fix it.
If you're having digestive issues, how do you fix it?
Gotcha. And I hear the end of what you're saying as far as variables, and I think that's a huge thing. My clients, if any of them are listening, they don't typically listen to me because they don't like me very much outside of working with me. But anyway, when variables change, the less the variables change, you're going to understand or have a better idea of why something worked or why something didn't. Much like you're saying, by throwing a blanket at it, if you change 5 things at once and it works, then you don't know why it worked. If you throw 5 things at it and it doesn't work, then same thing. You don't know exactly why it didn't work. So when it comes to digestive issues, I mean, that's such a broad, I mean, there can be so many.
I'll give you examples. So I have a guy that comes back and works with me about once every year or so, year and a half. He's been for years, and he has all kinds of he did have all kinds of digestive issues. And like Skip said, at first I kind of tried to change a few things, and it was like, okay, well, it worked better, but not as good. And then we just, this guy's been with me for years, and I just kind of switched things one at a time, because I had to figure out what was causing the problems.
Right.
And then it was a certain type of diet he needed. He needed actually lower protein, more carbohydrates, and lower fat. And then his digestive issues, he didn't have them anymore. But that was something I couldn't have changed, like 2 of those things, and not the other. And then we'd bounce back and forth, and we tried all the, the green foods and all that stuff, and it didn't work. And finally it was just, he didn't do well with high fat, high protein diets.
Okay.
And it's funny that you touch on the macros, because a lot of people, and even myself, I tend to think, it's probably a food. And sometimes people can think they can miss something so simple as, well, maybe it's oats or something, because they say, or they think, well, I've been eating oats for a long time, and all of a sudden it's a problem. Just because you eat something for a long time doesn't mean that it can't develop into some sort of an issue. So typically, if you eliminate one food at a time, you can get a better idea. But it's funny that you say that about the macros, because that's very true. Sometimes it is your actual macro ratios. If your protein is too high, if your fat is too, some people just don't tolerate higher fat, lower carbs, while some other people don't tolerate very well the higher carbs, especially when it comes to fiber. I think fiber is finally getting the attention it deserves in the last few years, in the sense that I don't think the large majority of people should be throwing down massive amounts of fibrous carbs or fibrous vegetables and things of that, because I think that a lot of people don't tolerate and don't digest those vegetables very well at all. So if you have distension and you have distension and you have bloat, a lot of people will do things like the broccolis and the things that take up a lot of space because they feel like it helps to satiate. I would argue that it doesn't. It just takes up space in the stomach. And then you have potential fiber issues where you're gassy, you're distended, you just generally don't feel as well. And then you eliminate, or you cut those vegetables in, make a really big cut them in half, cut them down to only 30% of what they were. Then all of a sudden they feel great. But when you make a recommendation like that, and people are kind of like, what do you mean? Cut my vegetables? I'm trying to stay healthy, things like that. Sometimes the massive amount of things that we eat, it just they don't digest well. Remember, we're eating a lot of food. We're eating a lot of protein. We're eating a lot of other foods too. And sometimes that can just pile on. So it's a process of elimination. That's where I would go first. I would start eliminating one food at a time, or not eliminating it, but changing it. If you think it might be a carb issue from fiber, change out, oats. If you're eating oats, to another carb source like, potatoes or sweet potatoes. I don't know. I just threw out some examples, and then just go from there one at a time.
It's not hard when someone starts a new food. Like, let's say they never eat oats, and they start eating oats, and they're all bloated, and they got problems. But it's another thing when someone has these problems consistently, no matter what they eat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where I figured it out, because I was changing like the carb sources up first. That didn't work. Changed up some of the protein, fat sources. It's all came with the same result. And that's when I decided, hey, this guy doesn't do well with one of these, is too much of one of them. And so I just bounced them up and down, and we figured it out.
All right. Yeah. Do you guys do anything with injectable L-carnitine? Any benefit to using injectable L-carnitine? If so, dosage, and when would y'all recommend taking it?
Never.
I've used it, a handful of times.
Burns.
See, I never had a burning issue with it. What I found was I don't like terribly frequent injections like that, even though it's very thin and it's kind of a water-based or kind of a watery type of solution. It's not difficult to inject, but it's like one more injection. Are you fucking kidding me? So I tried it a few times. Exactly. I tried it a few, and voluminous. I mean, it's not a terribly small amount either. It has to be IM. So the comment. Well, it's too voluminous to go sub-Q, though. I mean, you're typically talking a couple mil. Yeah, I mean, okay.
One. Anyway, yeah.
Probably not high enough at one, but nonetheless, if it was in combination with insulin, and my argument after I used it a few times was, I'd rather just take the insulin, especially when it's pre-cardio. So then coming back to variables, this is a very good example of that. So if you're using carnitine with a couple units of insulin, and let's say you get results, is it the carnitine? Is it the insulin? Yeah. Or is it a combination of the two? And I know I got just as good of results because I've always been a proponent of small insulin dosing prior to cardio, provided you're not so depleted and have blood sugar levels that are going to plummet while you're doing cardio. And let me just say, without getting into it too much, a couple IU of insulin or a couple units of insulin should not make you go, if you go hypo doing cardio, even if you take the couple units fasted, it's not, you better don't blame the insulin. You need to look at your diet closer to see why you're going hypo. Now, adding it on top of the potential that you're going to go hypo is even what. But so, please, anybody listening to this, don't do it. Well, Skip said I need to take insulin, prior to cardio, and that's going to be so much better. There's a myriad of reasons and ways to do it correctly. It's not. There's a whole system to it. So don't think you can do it on yourself if you don't know, or do it by yourself if you don't know what the fuck you're doing, because you can mess yourself up. Point is I didn't think, and I still don't think, that the carnitine, even injected, is worth all the injections, the voluminous. I don't think that the payoff is there. I've heard a couple other people say that it is, but it's a very, very small amount of people, and I don't buy it. I don't buy it, so I don't promote it.
And there was a point where, when I say sub-Q, there was a point where people were promoting that you could do spot fat reduction with it sub-Q. This is probably 15 years ago. So that's where I tried it, and it was not fun. I don't remember. It was probably 2 cc's, maybe one. It was a lot, but it burnt. God, that was not. And the guy that was swearing by it's like, dude, you just got to keep doing it. And man, finally, I was like, fuck this.
Yeah,
it was miserable.
Follow-up question: is the oral worth taking, or does it metabolize into a carcinogen? From what I understand, the oral
part
works.
Of the medicine cabinet got thrown out.
From what I understand,
oral what hurts?
The oral works, but it takes a long time to build up. That's what. This was 2018 Arnold Classic. Scott Stevenson, if you're watching, and John Meadows did a seminar. And they talked about how the oral would work, but you literally had to take it for months and months and months in order to get it to build up to be of any benefit. So,
right.
Yeah. So basically no, unless you keep taking it,
Exactly. I mean, and in relatively high doses, it's not, I don't think that the cost of benefit is there. You'd have to put in so much time and take so much of it that let's put it this way. If you believe that it works well for you, then just go with the injection, because not the reward, but the benefit is there versus having to take a ton of it orally when you can just inject it. And I say that even injecting it, the large amount of people, the majority of people, just aren't going to get much of a benefit from it. It's not like you're going to all of a sudden go, oh man, this is making a pretty obvious change.
Scott says a couple months. Scott says it'll build up in a couple months.
All right. The good thing about it is if you want to use it, everybody that works out should have like 5 extra bottles in their medicine cabinet they don't use. Yeah. So you can just go borrow all theirs, dig it.
There you go. There you go. All right, we had a bunch more stuff. I'm going to look over at see what I had going on the. I posted up a thing. Oh, yep, here we go. We got a bunch of them over at Instagram. I normally don't do Instagram, but I was like last minute trying to scramble and get our show together. So I got some over here. Okay, little drug stuff. This is the reason that we can't monetize the program now, as of now. Would love to know a Primo versus Masteron comparison, pros and cons of each, prep versus off season. I got to grab something to drink, so I'm going to let you guys start taking this one away. I'll be right back.
All right, run with it, Scotty. I'll piggyback off you.
Oh, my legs. So they're not the same drug to begin with.
No.
I mean,
would you take Masteron by itself?
No.
There you go. I wouldn't even take Primo by itself, but if I had to pick between the two, I would take Primo by itself. And
Primo's more anabolic.
So, right, exactly.
I mean, let's say you were a female, you'd want to take Primo over Masteron.
Yeah.
I used to like Primo. I thought it was pretty good stuff. And then, here's another problem, dude. I think you're pretty hard pressed to get real Primo if you're not getting it from somewhere real. And I don't think either one of them is going to. I think I would take Primo over Masteron basically because it just seems, in my opinion, to have worked better. But I don't think you're setting the world on fire with either one.
Right. Exactly.
They're a small part of the equation. But definitely, if you're a female, you take Primo over Masteron, of course. But yeah,
I see Masteron
there with them.
See if you agree with me or not. I see Masteron more as a like an addition to your testosterone dosage, basically, to make your testosterone dosage more efficient, better, that sort of thing. Primo I've used even within the last couple of years. And when I say I used it, I revisited using it because I hadn't used it in well over 10 years. And I didn't really like it then, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a run. I'll come back to it. I'll see how it goes. And I went 600 or 700 milligram with it. And honestly, I did it the right way in the sense that, again, coming back to variables, I was already running a cycle and I had felt like I had been on that cycle for a little while. So I added the Primo to the cycle to see if I would notice any different. Didn't change anything else and literally noticed nothing, to the point where after 8 weeks, I'm like, there's no sense doing this at 100 mg per mil. This is pretty voluminous. I'm not getting anything out of it. Pulled it out and didn't notice a difference either. And I do feel
also depends on what you're taking it with too. I mean, just saying into 2 individual drugs. I mean, what are you taking it with? What are you stacking it with? What amounts are you taking? I really don't see an off-season use for a male for either one, really.
And I wasn't off-season when I did it, but I will say I still expected to feel something with an increase because I wasn't running a ton of stuff at that time anyway. I mean, I agree with you that there are other, the other compounds factor in, but I know this. Once I pulled it out and I replaced it with NPP, within 2.5 weeks, noticed a difference. So that's what made me go, okay, had I not noticed a difference changing it to another compound, then I may not have thought, okay, maybe I'm just maxed out on my, my milligrams right now and anything additional isn't going to help. But I noticed the NPP kick, but did not notice anything from the Primo. Could be argued, like you said. Could be, but at the same time, you make it a good point too that you do have to make sure that you're actually getting legit. You got to make sure you're getting legit anything these days. I mean, whether it's Anavar or Winstrol or Primo or whatever the deal is. But I feel pretty confident. I think most people do. But I've had my. I don't want to give away too much information, but I'll just say that I trust that the things that I get are legit. That I don't worry about, and I'm in a position where I don't have to worry about that very often. Could it happen? It could of course happen, but it's not anywhere near as likely as if I were just randomly picking a source off of the internet and going that route.
Here's a fun one. Would you rather eat Jenny Craig's meals Oh, did you like that pause?
Well played. Yes, well played.
To diet for a show or do all of your cardio as Tybo with Billy Blanks?
Jenny Craig.
I'm going
Jenny Craig.
I don't know Billy Blanks. Is he a trip I take?
Oh, goddamn. For real? Billy Blanks, he's that loud black dude who does the what is it? Yeah, it's like Tybo, right? Yeah, you just said Tybo. It's like that boxing shit, cardio. Yeah, the infomercial.
You go with the Jenny Craig meals. You could always
I'm going with Jenny Craig.
Pull the carbs out or whatever if you needed to get leaner or something.
Work for Dan Marino.
You ever deal with anybody who's had small intestine bacterial overgrowth?
No.
I don't think so. I've dealt with a lot of shit, so I may have, but I don't recall. No.
Yeah.
Small intestine bacterial overgrowth. I don't think so.
Yeah. All right. How about some?
Now, was there a question in there, or is it just asking if we have?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. All right.
Tennis elbow rehab.
Oh, that active release stuff works.
Yeah, and movements to avoid too. That's the other part.
Yeah.
Well, that one's easy. Any exercise that irritates it. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like a dick, but anything that exercise, it's an itis, tendonitis. I call it itis issues, old man itis issues, because the older trainers tend to deal with it more because we do more work than the younger guys typically. So we ask for the inflammation. BPC? You down with BPC?
Holy shit. Skip just recommended BPC.
I'm looking for the segue.
Changed.
Okay,
we'll go to that. Let's go to that next.
Right.
I got some stuff. So I dealt with tennis elbow a few times. When I got it, when I did a manual labor job, because I was like using my hands all the time at work, all
you were
day
playing
long.
Tennis.
Yes, and then I was playing tennis, and then I was training. So yeah,
I'm pulling the crates.
Everything, dude. Anytime you're using your hands and everything. So here's the deal with tennis elbow specifically. So the hand is a very fascinating instrument. Okay, everything, because you could do also. It's strong, powerful, but it also.
Are you reading off a teleprompter?
It also can do very.
The hand is a fascinating. Huh?
The hand can be used like a knife.
We got Morgan Freeman. He changed to his Morgan Freeman voice. Everything.
Yeah. So, you can do a lot of. It's powerful, but you can do like a lot of intricate things with it. And the reason for that is everything that controls the hand is from here to here. And so, if you think about it, like think about the way like a puppet would be made, you'd have like all these little strings, you know what I mean? A machine, and that's exactly what that is. Everything that controls the hand is in the forearm. And so if you overstress your grip, then you end up getting that inflammation. And if it's on the top, that's tendonitis. And definitely ART.
Well, top or bottom?
Bottom would be golfer's elbow.
Right, but that's what he asked about, right?
Yeah. Wait, you get the top. I meant to say that's tennis elbow. The bottom being golf elbow. But yeah, you're right. Either of them tendonitis. So that ART, or any type of like really deep therapy, you can do it yourself too, because it's something you can reach. You know what I mean? So you can really actively work that. It's getting the inflammation down, number one. So repeated ice, like 20 minutes on, or you can take an ice cube and wrap it up in a paper towel so you can hold it, and then put that bare ice on the spot and like really dig in and massage it. NSAIDs, that's going to help temporarily. So you do those two things. BPC would be really beneficial. I think you're right on that. But the other thing is that you need to strengthen up your grip, because this happened because your grip was being overused to begin with. So you need to rest it. The worst move for tennis elbow is arm out, palm down. So like a front dumbbell raise, up like this. That's the worst possible thing that you could do for it. But there's obviously a lot of other shit. I would also use straps for anything you can use straps on. I mean, realistically, you got to take time off. You got to get the inflammation down, and the only way you can do that is by taking a little bit of time off. If Scott Stevenson's watching, he would say acupuncture too. He said that you can fix it right away with acupuncture. So there is that.
I had that done on mine one time.
Yeah.
Work. Yeah.
So those are a few things. And I'm supposed to ask the next question, but I was busy thinking about that shit. So, all right. We had a bunch more stuff, though. How How about if someone were to play it safe, just test him primo for a few cycles, can he come out with no long-term health issues?
Impossible answer.
Yeah, I can't say that.
Why is that?
We're not health professionals, and I would not. My conscience won't allow me to do that. Nobody can really say what'll happen to somebody if they have pre-existing issues, if they're predisposed to issues. It's too hard to say, and I don't want to say no. I can say this. Probably relatively mild compared to other things, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to come out with issues. I can't say that.
Yeah,
I think Scott said the same thing.
Once you suppress HPTA, there's no guarantee it's coming back.
Even though it typically, I'll go on record and say, even though it typically does, even if you beat the shit out of it. There are also, in fairness, people in their early 30s who have never done a testosterone cycle in their life and don't know because they haven't had blood work because they don't do steroids, that their testosterone is already in the tank. So here's what happens sometimes too. You're in your early 30s. You've never done blood work before. You do your first cycle, and then all of a sudden you come off and your testosterone 8 weeks later is in the shitter, and you're blaming steroids left and right when you don't even know if your testosterone levels were normal prior to taking the cycle.
Skip had a question.
There's a lot of variables.
BPC. Let's see. I want to know if BPC would help with chronic inflammation from injections. Speaking of BPC, I'm talking about debilitating soreness that oftentimes lasts for a week.
Actually, that was sent to me by Ken. I don't know his last name, but he wanted us to answer that. And he said, I know that you're not, here I'm just reading, I know that you're not the expert on BPC because you haven't used it before, but both Scotts probably could respond to that. By the way, I think you're a genius. I'm just finishing up the tight. In fairness, I think you're a genius. I know you've been doing what you do a long time. You're very good at it. Arguably, I'm not done. Arguably a savant. Oh,
I called you savant the other day. Remember that?
Yeah, let's not go overboard, Ken. I mean, I appreciate the thing there, but so we'll give Ken a shout out. Thanks for watching, Ken.
So what do you say, injection soreness?
Yeah, he wants to use BPC for injection.
From what I understand, he explained it more to me, so I'll explain it just so you guys understand. It is chronic and debilitating soreness from gear that would make you think that the gear was bad.
No, it couldn't be the gear.
But the gear isn't bad because the gear has been changed to different, from different, not only different compounds or not even different valves, but from different places like source. So it's not the gear itself. It's just that it's almost like the body is already in a very inflammatory state for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And when I'm saying inflammation, I'm talking about maybe 1.5 mil, and it ends up being debilitatingly sore for like almost 6 days, to the point where the muscle almost can't even be used in the process during that soreness.
I don't think BPC would work on that because BPC is actually natural. It comes out of the acid in your gut.
Yes, it does.
The only thing it enhances is the modular repair of your tendons. And ligaments.
So it's not for general soreness.
No, it doesn't. I don't think it has any effect on your muscular, on muscles, just on tendons and ligaments.
Okay, what would that inflammation be caused by? None of us are doctors.
Here's what I would say. Did it just start, or has it always been like that?
Been like that for 3 or 4 months.
Probably the carrier oil changed.
Different from different sources, completely different sources, just to eliminate the gear. Actually, now it could be that by coincidence,
carrier oil.
Yeah, it could be. But think about the volume. The volume isn't very high.
Because some people, ethyl oleate a lot. There's people that have that same reaction to ethyl oleate.
Yeah.
So that could be that. Is it? Ask him if you know him. Ask him if it's real clear looking.
I know him relatively well.
Yeah, if it's in grapeseed oil, he's going to know it. So
what if the oil was consistent the whole time and they'd use the same source and the same oil for say 3 years? Would it all of a sudden, I mean, I know that it could, but would it all of a sudden become an inflammatory issue? What I'm wondering is if there might not be, not only did I have the question about the BPC, of course, helping it out, but the other question being, is there potentially, because I think there could be, an inflammatory situation in the body that is not really caused by the gear, but the gear is just
I was wondering
out that there's an issue there.
That's what I was thinking.
Plus, your body can, you can become allergic to things that you're not allergic to, like for the first half of your life. So, I mean, it's not common for people to get that, but usually it's a carrier is the issue. They've switched. I mean, since you said he switched brands, I mean, I'd say if that happened to me, I think the gear might be a little dirty too, but that's probably not. I mean, it could also be how it's suspended. So they put in a little more. What are the ratios of the compounds that they're putting in the product? Is there more?
Yeah, it's not ridiculously
more carrier on the other.
I got to
strength in general.
I got to back up for just a second because I'm not sure if I caught the one part completely correct. So, is it all the same brand, or this is over the course of a number of brands?
This is. I assumed first time when they told me that it was the same gear, the same brand. Then they told me that they had switched to not just a different brand from somebody else, but switched it twice. And all three times had gotten the same response. That's why I think it's unlikely that it's an oil issue.
Yeah.
It's unlikely, or it's pretty obvious that it's not the one type of gear where sometimes you might have a bad vial. Or let's say you're using DHP and you didn't know that it had crashed a little, it was starting to crash a little bit, or you're at the bottom of a vial and there was something, but that it's been going on for so long that it's almost getting to the point where, here's an example. An injection of 1 mil ends up seeping, seeper. We've talked about seepers before. Yeah. It won't even stay in the muscle and it comes out. And then the injection site and all around it is inflamed for, another 4 or 5 days on top of that.
And it's not just delts. It's like all sites.
Everywhere.
Dude, I wonder, you mentioned, is it him? I wonder, because here's the thing too, like my allergies will be better sometimes than others. It's not necessarily that there's more of I get a dust allergy, and sometimes I'll deal with dust all day long. It's not a big deal. Other times I, go to move one thing in the basement and then I'm like all my eyes, everything are all inflamed. The way I understand it is that if you look at inflammation, and if you had a bucket in front of you, and Victoria actually is the one who kind of helped me understand this, that you have all these different things that kind of, add to that bucket. And so if that bucket's already full and then I have something else, there's that one thing that's enough to overflow the bucket. I wonder if his bucket's just overflowing right now, if he needs to reduce inflammation from this, and this, Exactly. How's his sleep? How's his stress levels? All that stuff. What else is going on in his life?
Is he borderline overtrained?
Right, exactly. All that.
Does he have other nagging, like, oh man, the knee is bothering me. There's inflammation there. There's odd inflammation in the wrist that can't be explained. Things like that. Yeah.
At that point, I'd feel like BPC would be a Band-Aid, Because it's like at the end of the day, you just have to get that inflammation down. Maybe it could help in that process, though. But I wouldn't. Yeah. I wouldn't take the BPC in order to keep taking the shots. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly. And that's a very good point. I agree with that.
It sounds like something's going on with him. I mean, obviously, your body can. You're puncturing your body with a needle, so your body, it can. If it doesn't want to have any exogenous stuck into it, it could reject that compound. I mean, I don't know the whole scientific reason, but if he's bounced around to different compounds and he knows it's not a certain, now I would tell him to step back and look and see if they're all made with the same carrier oil and it's different. If he's using ethyl 8 or something, you can actually smell it if it's not written on the label.
Oh yeah.
It has kind of a industrial smell to it, kind of. And, that could be it. But if not, then I think, like Scott said, I think it may be something with him.
All right. How about, let's see. If you had to add more weight to any gym machine, this is a fun one. What would it be?
Oh, the hammer incline press. The easiest machine to use. Hell yeah. Because I can put 4 on each side with the little 25 barely hanging on and nail those things out.
You're kidding me. Oh, yeah. You're telling me we got to get you those Dusty Hanshaw plate extenders for your hammer strength incline?
Well, right now I probably couldn't, but I mean, I would put, this is not too long, a couple of years ago, I would put 445s on, and you could hang like a 25 on there and like take the little collar thing and barely hold it on. Yeah, knock out 12, 15 reps with it.
How about you, Skip? If you had to add weight to anything?
Well, I haven't maxed out a machine yet, quite frankly, so I don't think I have to worry about that. Yeah, I'm not training with Dusty Henshaw poundages over here. I can't think of. I'm trying to think. There's got to be something that I could max out, but I can't think of one. I'm not maxing any leg sled, angle leg press.
With no top pole, just 2 side poles.
No, I'm not maxing out angle leg presses either. So I'm not much help on this one.
I was at this gym up in the UP, as we call it, the Upper Peninsula here in Michigan. This dude, Joe's Gym. I met Joe. He's the owner of the gym.
Really?
Yeah, he's retired corrections officer. Lives up there in the UP. Really cool dude. Like, I talked to him for 40 minutes. He had fabricated all sorts of stuff in his gym. Little tiny place, wood paneling, all these fabricated machines. He had a chest press that was selectorized chest press that went to 400 pounds.
Them old school ones, dude. Sometimes I pull. You ever do an old school preacher curl and you got like 3 plates on there and there's like 20 more plates? You're like, who in the fucking world?
Who in the hell is using that thing?
Yeah. Who is using this?
We used to have
rip my fucking biceps off.
We used to have one. I could put like a 25 on each side. And it was like tough. I wasn't a weak guy. I'm like, who the fuck loads this thing all the way? And you come by and see 2 45s on. I'm like, I want to find this guy.
I think weight plates for selectorized equipment like 30 or 40 years ago, they must have been dirt cheap because they just put a ton of them on there and figured, fuck it. They're not that expensive. We're just going to put them on there.
All right. What else do we have here? Okay. So he's not doing a show, but he's heading to the beach. Advice on drying out 1 week out from hitting the beach. Trying to look my best out there.
Beach including alcohol?
Yeah, that's a good question because you might mess it up in 1 hour.
You got to be really careful trying to. I can't tell any people I know that have made that mistake of drying out to go to the beach.
Yeah,
and then gone, even not party, but if you go out and party on top of it, you are going to pay the piper, baby.
Yeah,
because salt water dries you out. You're in the sun,
and you're not used to being in the sun.
I went to Mexico one time, got this best ripping shape ever, and decided to take a couple of diazides before I went. Yeah, dude, I paid the price hard the first couple of days. It was not pretty.
Yeah, and drying out a week before, if you were to dry out, you would dry out, a day or two before, and then you're going to look your best for a day or two. And then as soon as you start taking in water after being that dry, you're going to blow up like a puffer fish. You're better off, really. Not just to the guy asking the question here, but to anybody who goes this route, you're better off just going lean, taking in moderate amounts of water while you're out in the sun and everything else, and then just eating moderately. But then at night, and I'm kind of giving away what I do when I used to go on cruises with the kids, because I didn't want my distended gut out in the sun. I would eat much lower volume for like breakfast and lunch. I make sure I get enough water, and then I'd have a bigger meal at night, because then if I was distended, I was going to bed. Yeah. And nobody would see me because I wasn't walking around with my shirt up. And then the next day I get up and I would have cleared all that, food, and I wouldn't go crazy at night, but I'd have, a meal and, a pretty good sized meal, maybe a dessert, and get up and do the same thing the next day. And at least that way I stayed in, relatively good condition the whole time that I was there. I think you're better off doing that, because you're going to rebound at some point, and then you're going to look worse, and then you're going to feel like you look even worse because you're not training and because it's not your typical diet and that sort of thing. So drying out a week before, don't do that. Even if you are going to dry out, do it a day or two before, but it's still dangerous. Like F2H said, you're in the sun, you're going somewhere that you're not used to being in the sun. If you get burned at all, that's going to help to dehydrate you. Salt water. Yeah.
Because I can tell you, dude, I'm gonna tell the guy. Is this a question that's called in, or?
Yeah, it's on Instagram.
So I rolled down to Cancun one time. I was ripped, dude. I was in great shape. Single guy, bad. Staying at this resort. I got it going on. Took a couple diazides before I went. abs are out, whole 9 yards. I roll up in this hot tub one night with all these girls. Very badass, right? Well, in about 15 minutes, I thought I was going to pass out. And I could hardly get out of the hot tub because I was cramping so bad in my legs and my calves. So I looked like a dead jellyfish flopping outside of there. Yeah, it didn't work out too good. So I'd say just go as you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, there's a difference between looking good for summer and getting on stage. Like, and I'd even say I handle the whole thing different. Like, here's something I've gotten into is that I would have a thought that somebody who's like just looking to get in good shape and they want to run a cycle for the summer, they're going to do like a cutter. I like Master on Enethate because it's something that you don't have to take a lot of, like low volume basically. And it's something you could run that for 8-10 weeks versus the guys who are like, and then I'm going to take the Winstrol tablets. And, it's like things, the way that I get ready, when you're thinking about getting ready to look your best for a show, you're planning on looking your best for one day, like 1 hour of one day versus like you guys are saying, if you can just kind of like look good in general. I mean, the reality is if you're on gear, you're probably putting a lot of attention into your physique. You're probably going to look better than most people on the beach. At least hopefully you're going to look better on most people than on the beach anyway, right?
Well, and if you're out in the sun and you're losing water.
Sun and salt water are going to dry you out. You may take a day or two out there, but get in the ocean enough and get out in the sun, and you will dry out like you never thought you could.
Yep, you'll have veins everywhere if you're lean enough. Like you said, the sun, the salt water. You're not going to take in more water than you're going to sweat out anyway. At least while you're at the beach, so you're going to stay. You're going to look pretty damn good. And I think you touched on a good point too, Scott, when you said that you're going to look better than most people. Even if you lose 5 more pounds of body fat, no one's going to notice a difference if you were carrying 5 more pounds of body fat versus not. You're either in relatively good shape or you're not, because the average person is just going to know, oh, wow, he's in good shape. And here's what's even more important. And I know this is a shot to most people's ego. When you see somebody look at you at the beach, and that you might even think, oh, yeah, and maybe they're impressed with how you look. I promise you, and I know this hurts the ego, but 2 minutes later, they don't fucking remember you. They don't care. They don't give a shit. They were impressed for like a minute.
Yeah.
And then they're doing something else. They don't give a fuck. It doesn't make up their day.
Unless you're like Ronnie Coleman, then they'll remember you for a long time.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going down there to get laid, that's a little bit different. But I still wouldn't go with Diazide. And there are a couple jokes. There's a couple jokes here, but I'll leave them out.
I got some pictures of that trip because we walked down to like past the resort to the locals beach.
Yeah.
And we were all out there. It was me and another dude. He's a pretty big dude. And they were all the locals were running out, want to take pictures with us, posing like double biceps, like calling us Arnold. And we weren't big as those guys, but it was kind of funny. And we did look the best there. And let me tell you something. You walk down the locals beach in Cancun, you will be the best looking dude there.
All right. We actually had 2 questions that were the same. I have one here on Instagram. Ideal weight per week to gain while bulking. And then Ron here, who's watching on the live feed, says, what's a good weekly, monthly amount of weight during a bulk for a 200-pound male?
20% total. So 220. If you're 200, you get 220.
Every week?
No, not every week, not total, like off season. So say 2 pounds a week. Pound and a half, 2 pounds.
2 pounds.
Yeah, I would have put it at 1 or 2 myself, but again, it depends on body fat percentage and stuff like that, because here's another caveat. You could gain a pound a week. Mm-hmm. And if you're not insulin sensitive and you're not growing well and your diet isn't there, you could literally gain 18 pounds of fat and a couple pounds of muscle. Yeah. So, there's a lot of factors there.
One of these guys, the guy who was on Instagram, he's a client of mine, and he came to me, wanted to diet down, and he got decently lean, and we decided, we're like, why don't we turn this around, man? Why don't we? You're very lean now, like you could be leaner, but you're not getting on stage. What if we were to, turn this into a growth phase? Maybe added a little bit of supplementation now that he hadn't been using before. And the thing is, though, is that he had to be like on a keto diet to make this, to get leaner. Like he's not very carb receptive, So we're turning it around and we're bringing carbs in now. But he's an example of like his response of how he's going to grow is going to be very different than like if you're going to have Skip. You know what I mean? Like you handle carbs really well. You'd turn around, you'd probably be up, 8 pounds from dieting in the first week, just in volumized. You know what I mean?
Right. Filling out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I always like to use that like 10% rule. So, if you're 190, what's 10% of 190? 19 pounds. Yeah. So you don't really I don't want you to exceed 209. At that point, it starts to get counterproductive in the vast majority of people.
Here's a good one. Should legging body parts be trained with a higher frequency?
It's actually a really good question.
It is.
My first move is to actually decrease, depending on the muscle group. But let's just say, for the sake of, because arms are always, I want my arms to grow. And what happens when you want your arms to grow? You end up training them more frequently. And what you're really doing is they weren't growing typically, not all the time, but typically they weren't growing to begin with because they were overtrained. So then you're training them more and they're becoming even more overtrained. Arms they get a lot of indirect movement or work from the other movements like chest pressing and back pulling. So a lot of times when you cut the frequency, you end up, without even meaning to, growing and progressing because of the increased recovery. I always go that route first. Now, if it's legs or something, then you have to take a look at the intensity, the volume, whether they're recovering, things like that. Major muscle groups, sometimes you can kick it up a little bit. But the large majority, especially when it comes to things like chest versus legs. Legs, a lot of times, because they're hard to fucking train, balls out. A lot of times legs can handle more, like they might not be training them hard enough, but chest, bis, tris, those things most people will pound. They'll go to failure and they end up doing too much work. I always tell my clients, I tell my friends, I tell people in the gym, if you're training chest to failure, your ass better be training legs to failure. Because if not, then you have an imbalance in effort and an imbalance in intensity. So a lot of times that kind of wakes them up and goes, oh shit, I'm not training legs hard enough. And typically that's the case. So it depends on the muscle group. It depends on, whether I'll leave it at this. I would start with cutting back first to increase recovery. Because if you can train more frequently, then you need to have better recovery. So you should already be growing anyway, just not growing enough to be able to increase frequency. So
what you got, Scott?
Well, I mean, I'd say first you have to look at how are they training it before. So, I mean, if you're doing like 150 working sets for biceps and you think you should increase the frequency, well, the frequency is already the problem, like Skip said. But if you're not doing anything for them, like 2 sets or something, well, I mean, higher frequency would be relevant to what you're doing. But in general, most people overtrain, especially small muscle parts. But I disagree with Skip. I think you should train chest, back, and bis and not train your legs. And that's just the way it is.
Right.
I've got 2 things. First thing, Skip, I took your advice. You probably don't remember giving me advice, but I took your advice. We talked about this. We talked about legging arms a little while ago.
So it wasn't the wrong advices. I just want to make sure.
That's yet to be discovered. We'll find out because I'm still doing it. But so I've been doing push-pull legs, and with that, my arms have not been getting as much attention. Like every time I train, it's like back gets hammered really hard. My biceps are a mild afterthought. Chest gets hammered really hard. Shoulders, they're kind of little attention, and then arms, triceps are mild afterthought. So I wanted to, and I asked you guys, I was like, well, I'm already doing very low volume. And you were like, it's easy. You just need to put priority on your arms. So I've been for the last several weeks now, I've changed my routine to push, pull, arms, legs as my split. And I think, I mean, it's hard to tell. Obviously, I have more inflammation in the guns now, but I think that's working. In the guns.
How big are the guns? Have you measured them?
No, I'm afraid to. I'd be disappointed. I'd be sad. You know what I mean?
Do you register them? Register your guns?
Other thing I was going to say is I wonder how he's training this legging body part. Because I'll tell you what, I feel like what I have discovered is that, people are like, well, my legs genetically are weak, or, my back is genetically weak. My chest is genetically weak. And then you discover like, oh, but you have really good shoulders. And you're pressing with them every time you bench press. It's like another factor would be before you start changing the volume, if what you're doing isn't working, then maybe look at what you're doing meaning the technique.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all think that, like, you know, you may be killing it every time you train chest, but if you're not training, if you're hitting your shoulders, you know, you're not hitting the chest, then you got a problem. I wouldn't do more of that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
well, if something isn't you make a very good point. If something isn't growing, I always laugh when people say, well, you know, no matter what I do, you haven't done everything yet. Don't kid yourself.
Yeah.
It's very, very rare for someone to have done everything and exhausted because they don't have the knowledge and the knowledge base to be able to cover all the options that they think. What they really mean is my legs aren't growing as easily as everything else.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's important to note the difference. When it comes to, you know, especially with legs and things. But a lot of times, you know, I'd be surprised if someone had lagging legs and they've really focused on them, focused on the training, focused on optimizing everything for a year and couldn't make dramatic changes with that body part. I would find that very, very difficult to believe. Even with, I don't want to say with shitty genetics, but even with mediocre genetics, I would find that difficult to believe.
Yeah. All right.
Mechanics is huge. Mechanics are huge, like you said, doing everything the right way. And it's very difficult for us because we're not able to demonstrate. I mean, I could talk about, this is part of the thing that I like with one-on-one clients. I can pass on so much information to them because I'm there to demonstrate and show them. But on a show, on a podcast like this, you can't demonstrate those things and discuss those things. It's very difficult, even with online clients, without video to show them to describe how to do something correctly. Because not only do you need to describe it, they need to understand it and do it, but you need to be able to look at it and watch them do it and say, no, here, twist this, or pull their arm, or change their angle or their grip and adjust things. And then it's like, oh shit. Okay. Yeah. Now I totally notice the difference. Things like that.
Yeah. All right. Any changes to skip loading on a deload week since your lower volume will use less glycogen stores?
Yep.
Yeah.
Typically if you're going into a deload week, you're not going to need to load as much because the demands for that stored glycogen the following week while you're cruising is not going to be very high. Now, coming off of the deload week, you can see how they responded. And sometimes something as simple as hunger and inflammation is down, their weight will be down. So they're thinking, oh, well, shit, I'm going to get a good skip load. Typically, you're not going to need it coming off a deload week either. But if you're coming back into a blast phase and you want to make sure that you don't come into that blast phase weak and not fully loaded or glycogen stores full, then you would take it back up. But typically, so that one's kind of to be determined on an individual basis. But I would say the large majority of the time, 9 out of 10 times, coming off of that last blast week, going into a cruise week, you typically will need to cut it back because you're just going to end up with glycogen that you're not going to use.
Got more Primo stuff. This is like the third question we've had about Primo today. Any helpful info on Primo? Dose, how long to take it, what to take in conjunction. That's a pretty basic one.
Mm-hmm.
Test.
Injectable Primo?
I'm going to guess yes. Yeah. I never see the oral around anymore.
Yeah, I never do either. What's the first one? I'd say this, Scott, because we've talked about it a couple times today. Number one is make sure you have a real.
Was the whole question?
Helpful info on Primo.
Yeah.
Dose and how long to take it.
Take 2-to-1 Primo to test. But I don't think, I mean, that's what you could do, but I mean, I don't know. Go ahead, Skip.
Well, no, I'm just that's a pretty big ratio. I can't say that it's wrong. I was surprised that you'd go 2-to-1. You mean 2-to-1 Primo with half the tests, or do you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 2-to-1.
It's weak. I mean, look, I always describe it as weak, and I know this isn't exactly correct, but to try to explain it to clients and explain it to people, I just call it a watered down version of DECA. And I know that that's not the exact way or the best way to explain it, but it's just a watered down version. It's just a weak, to me, a relatively weak. If you take 10 of the main AAS out there available for, say, a male in the off season, or even pre-contest for that matter, honestly, I'd put Primo at about 9. I mean, as far as 9th on the list, maybe even 10th on the list, it's just not very strong. There are other compounds that are better, and you'll get more. Yeah, you'll get more out of it. Now, Primo, I think, comes into the picture if you have things like, well, I respond poorly to this, and I have prolactin issues, so I try to stay away from DECA and MPP, and I have this, and yes, I have high estrogen, so I try not to run as much tests, and trend makes me not sleep. I mean, if you start eliminating the better compounds, then Primo will look better and better. Then it's more of an option. But if you don't have issues with those better compounds, honestly, run the better compounds. And then you don't have as much volume to have to inject either, because Primo is going to be typically 100 mg per mil, where you're going to get, 200, 150, 200, 250, 300 mg, sometimes EQ. I mean, EQ is typically 300 to 400 mg all the time now. So, less volume is always good too. We were just talking about inflammation earlier with, voluminous shots and things like that. Try to get out of it with less volume if you can. If you can take something that's a little bit stronger and it's going to be better, then get away from Primo. Primo is kind of like, I don't want to say a last resort, but if you have to eliminate other compounds, then Primo becomes a little bit more appealing if you're a male.
It doesn't aromatize much, and it's kind of like a weak testosterone propionate.
Fair enough.
It's like the little cousin.
Yeah,
I don't really see much. I mean, like I said, if you don't have problems with, testosterone aromatizing, or, you deal with it okay. I mean, you might as well take tests and just not even take Primo.
Yeah.
I like that Jenny Craig question. That was fun.
You did.
I didn't answer the add weight to any machine. I think I'm with you, Skip. I can't think that I've maxed a machine out.
Yeah, now I can max them out when it's on the Strive 3-point thing, and I put them on the low, because I tend to like the low point weight load of a Strive machine. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, I like the low end because it's like the leg extension. It's easier on my knees. I get a better contraction. I like the low end on the preacher curl because I get a better contraction at the top. So yeah, you got to put more weight on it. But I guess I could argue that I'm maxing out the low position. No one's going to be impressed by that on the leg extension because that's the low position. Same with their leg curl too. I like the contracted position, and I like to not put that heavy stress on the stretched position because of the vulnerability in that position. But that's just me. So there really isn't anything I'm maxing out either. I'm with you. I'd love to say that I was, but the truth really is I'm not.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that's about all we got here. Scott, we had so much stuff. Last episode, people loved the gun content. Blood, sweat, and guns. They were like, they all started asking gun questions. In fact, if you guys have any gun questions, if you ask them literally right now, you've got the opportunity.
BSG and G.
Yeah.
I got ammo.
Yeah, I hear there was some. I didn't watch it. Somebody sent me a video, and they were like, "Hey, I hear all the gun laws are going to change." Have you heard anything about that?
I don't watch the news.
Okay, I don't watch the news either. I try to.
Because you're just getting propaganda of one side or the other.
Wait till it's all speculation at this point.
It's all just everything. It's part of dividing the team.
Yep,
all right. Agree. Best home defense firearm.
Whatever you got that works.
Well, if you're gonna go out and buy something for home defense, what should you buy?
This is gonna. Okay, I'll now go to the next thing. Whatever you can operate, efficiently and well. So if you're really good with your pump shotgun from when you were a kid, I say rocket. Because if you think I gotta have a handgun because people say I gotta have one, but you got crappy fundamentals and you can't hit shit, it's not gonna do any good. So whatever you have that you're competent with, that you can perform with and execute with, that includes loading, malfunction drills, presenting the gun, aiming, hitting your target. Then I think it's overrated that you have to have a certain kind of. I mean, there could be situations where one's better than the other, but just remember, if you're going to get in a gunfight, bring the biggest gun you got. All right, which is always a plus too.
Ooh, we got a question. What is your dream gun?
Oh, a Dillon M134 minigun.
Dude, he answered that so fast.
I know, right? Like he was waiting. Matter of fact, maybe that's an alias. Ethan Dowling. Maybe that's just an alias, and he put that question in there himself.
That's the coolest thing I've ever shot.
Yeah? You shot one?
Oh, yeah. I've used them.
That's that thing. I've seen that on YouTube. the minigun. That's like there's like a switch to turn it on, and it's like
it's electric.
Yeah, it's like you would think, Skip, that like you were about to operate some sort of like machine in a car manufacturing plant. Like that's the way.
So is it a handgun? I mean, what the hell is it?
It's a minigun.
What the hell is a minigun? I don't know what that means.
It's a barrel gun. It's got like the 134 has 6 barrels. It shoots like 6,000 rounds a minute.
Oh,
like shit. Right now, they currently you can use that of a Crow system, so you don't have to man the gun. You look through a FLIR camera, and you got a remote control.
You got a camera?
Vehicle. Yeah, they're on top of the vehicle. They've had them for a while.
Wow.
They're on top of the vehicle, so the turret gunner's not out exposed.
Huh, that makes sense, man.
Yeah. So what's it called?
That's a Dillon M134 minigun, but GE makes a new one now too that's coming out. It's supposed to be better.
Okay, so shouldn't that gun be the answer for the best self-defense in-home firearm?
Well, you'd need like 6 of us to carry it around.
You just have it mounted in your bedroom where
I'll send you a video or something once you can get
aim it at the front. Okay, yeah, send me one.
Yeah,
aim
so
it at the front door.
Our enemies don't like it because you put tracer rounds in it, like every 4th round, and they call it the breath of Allah because it's all red.
Oh no!
Yeah, well, they have them on everything. They have them on, Apaches, A10s.
You're making an assumption that the only enemies that the United States has. That's not fair. I
like what Tanya Miller said. Tanya Miller said, "Do you have that on your vision board?"
Shit.
All right. Yeah, I thought you were gonna say like a shotgun. That's what I figured you're gonna say.
For what?
For best home self defense.
I mean, it's whatever you can, whatever you're good with, whatever you can. If you're really good with a handgun, you got good fundamentals and you can shoot, that might be the best thing for you. But I always say, people always think, oh, I got to have this, got to have that. But you got to have something you can operate and you're efficient with, and that you can, load work malfunction drills, that you can present the gun, you're accurate with it. And that can be a lot of things, I mean, it doesn't have to be, I have personal preferences, but my personal preferences will be based off of what I'm really confident with.
Yeah. Which you probably could handle, like you could probably do whatever you needed to with anything.
Yeah, it doesn't really, I'll take something over nothing.
Yeah.
I'll take a single shotgun over nothing.
Yeah. I had one of those when I was a kid. It was a bolt action 410 single shot shotgun. It was my dad's. How about pump shotgun with a pistol grip and a modified choke loaded with buckshot?
If it works for you. Here's one thing I kind of, when I talk to people about this, is it's preferable that you have a firearm that you don't have to like work the action on. Now, granted, you could have a pump shotgun loaded. I do advocate, if you're gonna have a gun for home defense, there are situations, it's a personal decision, but you should have the gun loaded in the chamber and be ready to go. So you want a gun that can get up and go to work with. Because you get woke up at 2 a.m, someone's breaking your house. You need to have something that's ready to go.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't really like safeties on pistols and stuff. But some people, it's a personal choice, and they need to train with the safety on when they're training, so they know to take it off when they have to use it. But I like things that are a little quiet because, if you set your lighting up in your house correctly and you have a plan, if someone were to come in your home, you don't actually go play SEAL Team 6 and dive through the house. You just fall back to the bathroom, hold the bedroom door. Better to ambush than be ambushed. What are they going to take, your TV? Who cares? Yeah,
you mentioned that we actually had gotten off the air a couple episodes ago. I don't have that set up. You were saying like put a nightlight by where it will backlight them basically, and then you're in the shadow still.
Yeah, just put it back like a little, like for the babies, little baby night lights. Just put them like outside your bedroom door, by your entrance of your front door, things like that, and your floodlights coming in. That way, everything's backlit coming into you. You're in your bedroom, get up, go in the bathroom, hold by the bathroom door. On the bedroom door, it's dark, it's black. No one's going to see you in there.
Yeah.
I think it's foolish to run out. People say, oh, someone come. Now, if you have kids, it's a different scenario for a lot of things. But if you live by yourself or it's just you and your significant other in a bedroom sleeping, you're not doing yourself, do me favors, jumping out in the house, running around, because you could you always want all the advantages you can have. What if I come out of my living room, there's 3 dudes out there that are armed?
Yeah.
Then I'm in a 3-on-1 situation, not a good situation. I don't care how good you are with a gun to be in. So why not just fall back? Let them come to you.
Do you take your wife with you when you fall back, or do you just fall back yourself?
She's on her own.
Cover. I use her as cover.
Depends on the wife.
Skip, what do you got going on? Oh, I was going to change subjects. What do you got going on, Skip, with training? How's that all that going? I've seen some of your clients and stuff you posted.
Training's going well. I mean, my one-on-one, I enjoy very well. I just took on a new client about a week ago. I'm going to stay at 5. I'm not going over that because I like it. I enjoy it. And I don't want it to get crazy. Online's going great. My own training is going well. I'm transitioning to TRT. Could be inflammation, could be not inflammation. The point is I'm going to transition to TRT for 2 or 3 months, and volume is lower. Things are going quite well. Legs are coming back, and that's my priority for this year. So I'm really enjoying. It's funny when I get a glute pump. I'm doing a lot of lunges now and things like that. Where like I took for granted that I was able to train legs for so long, but now after that injury, I'm getting back into putting more focus and time and attention on planning my leg training more so than I did in the past. And I like it. I think it's starting to pay off. We'll see how it goes. It's only February. So
is your training personally any different now that you've been training clients in the gym?
I'll tell you what's hard. I'll be honest with you. There is one negative to it. The negative is I'm in the gym all day, consumed with exercises, reps, planning, programming. Someone who does what we do, if you don't do it, you might not understand how all-consuming it is. Even though it's a client of yours and it's like not you, you want everything to be perfect. Mm-hmm. So you're programming each client much like you would program, not much like you would program yourself for what you need. Clearly you're programming for what they need, but you're putting in that same effort, if not more. And you're doing that for each client. And by the time you're done and you're going to do your own training, it's almost like psychologically you've been through
all these workouts.
5 sessions. Yeah. What helps me now is I don't train in the same place that I train my clients.
Okay.
I train up here now in West Palm with my new training partner. And so it's a different venue. I'll tell you what, it got so, with so many session stuff, that I actually had to start logging my own poundages again because I couldn't remember what I did last time because there's so many exercises running through my head. But when I changed to this new gym that I only train myself at, then I can remember those things again. It doesn't all run together. That part was a difficult adjustment for me because sometimes I'm actually tired psychologically until I get going in my own session, and then everything is great. So my training hasn't changed, but there is that added. I spend a lot more time in the gym than I ever have in a very, very long time, years and years and years. Nice. So that is different.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I feel like my training's changed. I feel like part of my intensity has gotten more intense because, especially if I'm training with one of my clients, because I'll do that too. It's like you have to set an example then. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's one client right now that I want to train with, and we've been trying to hook it up, and I was going to go down to Miami and train legs with him, and then it gets too late because I train later at night. But I'm looking forward to it because he's got me in the strength department, but I know I can cripple his ass because he's going to want to, he's got that ego and that competitive drive too. So he's going to want to keep up. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to bury you, bro. You're going to be stronger than I am, but I'm going to bury you by the time you leave here. So we haven't had that opportunity to do it yet, but I look forward to it's coming up. It'll be soon.
Nice. Get some video of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about it here. All right. Anything else before we go, guys?
Can't think of anything.
All right. Nope. Well, in that case, guys, check out truenutrition.com. Use our code ADVICES. Great products. You get some additional savings if you use our code. Like I said, too, it helps to support our programming. I'm using the Perry MD Mountain Dog formula for intra-workout with highly branched cyclic dextrin, EAAs. I just picked up some additional EAAs, just like this. I'm still getting the straight raw EAA, Skip. I didn't upgrade to the flavored stuff. And then I just mix in the Crystal Light. You know what I mean?
Right. It'll work. It'll be, but I tell you, you'll like them if you get the flavor. There is one more thing I don't want to forget. I do want to say happy Valentine's Day to all my side pieces. If I did not contact you today or send you anything, it's an oversight on my part. I apologize, and I'll make up for it in a later date.
I surprised Victoria. I sent her some flowers.
So did I.
Yeah. Oh, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch.
Oh, shit.
I just realized why
and I took it.
He was good.
I just realized why my wife's not talking to me today. It's Valentine's Day.
Oh.
Yeah.
Actually, I set it up for Saturday. I didn't want her to think like that I have to spend half of the day thinking that I didn't, like, I wanted her, so she already got it yesterday. You know what I mean?
Be honest, S2H, though. You've been married for a long time like I have. Is Valentine's Day really, I'm not trying to take away because, your wife may look at it differently. Mm-hmm. But I always say, I'm like, my wife is not my Valentine. She's my wife. I've been married for 30 years. We'll do something, but it's not this big. We don't take advantage, and I don't like to celebrate Hallmark holidays where this holiday has been, predetermined to try to commercialize and make a ton of money. Sweetest day, Valentine's Day, shit like that. No, I'll tell you what. My wife is not she's not as big on it either. She wants to do something, but it's not anything that's, oh my God, we're not doing anything, or we exchange cards and.
I think it just depends on the wife.
Chocolates and,
probably.
Yeah, I've only got one right now, so I can't compare to
others.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Yeah. All right. In that case, guys, we'll get out of here for another episode of Blood, Sweat, and Gear. Check out teamskip.com. Head on over, like I said, to truenutrition.com. You could use our code advices for some savings. Once again, we've got Patreon. I'll put that down in the show notes if you guys want to help support our programming. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you probably already subscribed if you made it all the way through this show. But if you haven't, please do, because we got several programs coming out each week. All your comments, likes, all that stuff help to boost us in the algorithm. Guys, we will see you soon. Gentlemen, thank you much, as always.